The scent of pine and cinnamon should have been comforting. It was Christmas Eve, after all. But standing in my daughter-in-law's impeccably decorated living room, the air felt thin, sharp as shattered glass in my lungs. Elena's words, delivered with a saccharine smile that didn't reach her cold, blue eyes, hit me with the force of a physical blow. The greatest Christmas gift you could possibly give this family, Vivian, she said, adjusting the bow on a perfectly wrapped box under the 10-foot tree, would be to find somewhere else to be tomorrow. Permanently. My son, Liam, stood beside their roaring gas fireplace, his back to me, shoulders rigid. He didn't turn, he didn't defend me. He just stared into the artificial flames. A silent accomplice. If you're watching from her side, you know that feeling. I whisper now, my voice low and steady for you, but my hands were trembling then. That moment the ground disappears from under you. Subscribe, and let me know where you're watching from. Your comments and likes let me know I'm not alone in this. But let me rewind. How did a mother, who gave everything, end up being told she was nothing but a burden on Christmas Eve? 3 years ago, I sold the small but charming coastal cottage in Bar Harbor, Maine, that my late husband Arthur and I had bought as our retirement dream. The saltbox-style house, with its weathered shingles and view of the harbor, was my last tangible connection to him, to the life we'd planned. The sale netted me $215,000, every single penny of that, plus $35,000 from my own dwindling savings. A total of $250,000 was handed over as a down payment for this very house, a sprawling, modern monstrosity in a sterile suburb of Charlotte, North Carolina. It was to be their forever home, a place for my grandchildren to grow up. They'd promised, with tears in their eyes, that I would always have a place with them. "This is your home too, Mom," Liam had said, hugging me tightly. "We'll take care of you, just like you've always taken care of me." Now, on the eve of the holiday, I'd financed the tree, the mountains of presents, the catered Christmas dinner for 25 guests. Selena had decided I was obsolete. I said, my voice eerily calm, a stark contrast to the screaming vortex inside my head. "Do you have anything to add?" He finally turned, his face a mask of weary annoyance. "Mom, can you not make a scene? It's Christmas." Elena's been under a lot of pressure with the party. "Your hovering hasn't been helping." My hovering, I'd spent the day stringing lights on the exterior hedges, the afternoon baking 6 dozen of Arthur's famous shortbread cookies, because it was tradition, and the evening wrapping the last of the presents Elena had ordered online, my fingers cramping around the expensive paper. The only thing I'd hovered over was the suggestion that maybe we didn't need a live harpist for the Christmas dinner. "Where exactly am I supposed to go?" I asked, my gaze fixed on my son, willing him to look at me, to see the woman who had raised him, loved him, sacrificed for him. Elena answered instead, waving a dismissive hand adorned with a diamond ring I'd helped pay for. "I'm sure you can figure it out. A long-term stay hotel, that retirement community you looked at last year. Honestly, Vivian, at your age, you should be enjoying your freedom, not being tied down with our family chaos. This is my son's house, too," I said, the words tasting like ash. Liam cleared his throat, his eyes finally meeting mine, but there was no warmth in them, only a cold, hard finality. "Mom, it's Elena's house. She's the one who designed it, who manages it. You just gave us a financial head start. Once, a financial head start. Once, $250,000. The sum total of my life with Arthur, reduced to a head start." I stood there, in the open-plan great room with its vaulted ceilings and imported Italian tile, looking at the custom-built bookshelves my money had made possible, the professional-grade kitchen where I'd cooked them meals just last week. They had absorbed my sacrifice, my love, and metabolized it into entitlement. And that's when it happened. Not a breaking, but a clicking, a deep, fundamental gear in my soul shifting into a new, uncharted position. "You're right," I said, my voice still soft, but now laced with a new steel. "I should go." Elena's perfectly sculpted eyebrows shot up in surprise. She'd expected tears, pleading, a performance she could later recount to her friends as Vivian's Christmas meltdown. This calm acceptance wasn't part of her script. "I'll pack my things and be out within the hour," I continued. Liam actually looked relieved, the tension in his shoulders easing slightly. "That's probably for the best. Mom, we can talk after the new year. Once all the holiday stress is over, after the new year." As if this was a minor scheduling conflict, not the eviction of a mother from the family she'd built. I walked upstairs, my legs moving on autopilot, to the first-floor guest suite that had been my home for the past 8 months. Not my room. I was never allowed to call it that. Always Nana's suite or the guest room, a semantic reminder that my presence was temporary. A guest always leaves. As I folded my sweaters into my largest suitcase, I could hear them murmuring downstairs, their voices rising with excitement. Alina was already planning. This will make the perfect yoga and meditation space. We can get rid of all this dark, old lady furniture. Liam agreed. Yeah, and we can finally get that Peloton you wanted. Neither of them gave a single thought to the woman upstairs whose life savings had purchased their Peloton space. I paused, my fingers brushing against a small, framed photograph on the nightstand. Arthur, his face weathered and kind, smiled back at me, forever frozen at 38 years of marriage. And he had never once made me feel like a visitor in my own home. Don't you worry, my love, I whispered, my breath fogging the glass. She's not the only one who can make plans. But first, I had to get out, and I had to make a call. Sitting in the driver's seat of my sensible sedan, parked a block down from the house my $250,000 had bought, I felt a surreal detachment. The Christmas lights on the neighboring houses twinkled, cheerful and mocking. I pulled out my phone, my hands steady now, and dialed the number I hadn't used in years, but had kept for just such a rainy day. Law offices of Franklin and Reed, a crisp female voice answered. Benjamin Reed, please, it's Vivian Costello. It's an emergency. A moment of silence, then a click. Vivian, Ben Reed. It's been a long time. Is everything all right? Ben had been Arthur's lawyer and friend. He'd handled his will, the estate, and had warned me, in his gentle but firm way, about the risks of giving Liam and Alina such a large sum. It's not, Ben. I told him everything. Elena's Christmas Eve ultimatum, Liam's complicit silence, the casual erasure of my contribution. I spoke without hysterics, just cold, hard facts. Ben listened, and I could hear the soft scratch of a pen on paper. Vivian, I'm so sorry, but I'm not entirely surprised. We've discussed this. We have, but you said something then, Ben. Something about the structure of the payment. You insisted on something. My mind was so fuzzy with grief back then. I just signed where you told me. What was it? There was a long pause. I could picture him in his book-lined office, steepling his fingers. Vivian, the $250,000 was not a gift. Not legally. Given the amount and your own financial situation, I structured it as a private, intra-family loan, secured by a second position lien on the property. The promissory note is for the full amount, at a minimal interest rate, with your name listed as the lender. More importantly, to secure that loan, you were added to the property deed as a tenant in common, with a 40% ownership stake. The world outside my car window seemed to tilt. What's all in the documents you've signed? Deed of trust, recorded with the Mecklenburg County Register of Deeds on October 15, 2021. Document number 2021-084572. Liam signed it. Alina, well, she was too busy with the builders to come to the signing. She never executed the spousal waiver. But your interest in the property is ironclad. Through the bare branches of the trees, I could see the warm glow of the great room window. Alina was hanging a stocking on the mantel, laughing at something Liam said. They were celebrating my departure, utterly oblivious. Ben, I said, my voice dropping to a whisper. Hypothetically, what would happen if I called that loan, or decided I wanted to sell my share? Well, as a 40% owner, you have the right to partition the property, that is, to force a sale. They would have the right of first refusal to buy you out at fair market value. If they can't, the house is sold, and you receive 40% of the net proceeds. I watched Liam pour 2 glasses of wine, toasting their newfound freedom. Ben, I want to exercise that right. Prepared the notice. I want it delivered by courier on December 26th. Vivian, are you absolutely sure? This is the nuclear option. It will cause irreparable damage. The damage was done when my son allowed his wife to tell his mother to disappear on Christmas Eve. They made it a business decision. Ben, I'm just following their lead. After hanging up, I sat in the silent, dark car. The click inside me had become a roar, but I wasn't finished. I scrolled through my contacts and found another number. The Grand Manor Inn, a cheerful voice answered. How may I direct your call? Catering department, please. A moment later. Catering, this is Sophia. Sophia, this is Vivian Costello. I need to speak to you about the Christmas Day dinner reservation for 25 under the name Costello. Oh yes, Mrs. Costello. Everything is all set for tomorrow. The chef is so excited about the menu. I'm afraid there's been a change of plans. Sophia, I need to cancel the reservation. A stunned silence. Cancel, Mrs. Costello. It's Christmas Eve. The food is already being prepared. We've turned away other bookings. Our cancellation policy is 100% of the estimated cost for cancellations within 24 hours. I understand, and I accept that. Charge the card on file. The thing is, I'm the one who signed the contract. I believe I have the authority to cancel, but the bride, I mean, your daughter. Surely you need to speak with her. No, Sophia, I don't. She and my son have made it abundantly clear that my involvement in their holiday is no longer welcome, so I am honoring their wishes. Please cancel everything. It took another 10 minutes of firmly and politely reiterating my position, but eventually, it was done. The $8,500 Christmas dinner was canceled an hour later. I was checked into a suite at the Alexander, a boutique hotel in downtown Charlotte. I ordered a pot of tea and a club sandwich from room service, and as I sat looking out at the city lights, I felt a sensation I hadn't experienced since Arthur's death. The quiet, unshakable satisfaction of taking control of my own life. My phone started ringing at 12:23 a.m. The screen flashed LIAM. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again and again. On the fifth call, I answered. What did you do? Elena's voice was a shrill shriek, so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. I honored your request, I said calmly, taking a sip of my tea. You wanted me to disappear, so I disappeared. The Grand Manor called. They said you canceled our Christmas dinner. Our Christmas dinner. Vivian, there are 25 people coming tomorrow. My parents flew in from Connecticut. I'm sure there are. That does sound like a problem. Liam grabbed the phone. Mom, this is insane. You can't cancel Christmas because you're upset. I didn't cancel Christmas. Liam, you can still open presents. You can still sing carols. I just canceled the $8,500 dinner I was paying for. The silence was deafening. I'd never discussed the specific costs with them before. I'd just paid the invoices, wanting to be the generous grandmother, the supportive mother. $8,500. Liam's voice was faint. Did you think the harpist played for free, or that the prime rib and lobster just materialized? Your fairy tale Christmas had a very real price tag. But we can't tell 25 people there's no dinner. Alina wailed in the background. You're resourceful adults, I said. I'm sure you'll figure something out. I hear Boston Market is open on Christmas Day. Alina was sobbing now. Ugly, gasping sounds that, a month ago, would have sent me rushing to her side with comfort. Now, they just sounded like the tantrum of a spoiled child. How could you do this to us? We trusted you. Trusted me. You told me to get out of your family. I'm simply complying. I didn't mean forever, she cried. I just meant for Christmas Day. Ah, I see. So, I was supposed to psychically understand that permanently actually meant for 24 hours. My mistake. Liam tried a different tack, his voice strained with panic. Mom, please, let's be adults about this. Come back to the house, and we'll work it out. The house where I'm no longer welcome. The house where my presence ruins the holiday spirit. I don't think so. Where are you? Alina demanded. That's no longer your concern. You made it quite clear that my living arrangements are my problem to solve. I could hear frantic whispering. Can you at least call the inbox? Liam pleaded. Tell them it was a mistake. It wasn't a mistake. It was a very clear financial decision made by the person holding the purse strings. But what about our guests? What will people think? They'll think you're hosting a less extravagant holiday than you'd planned. The horror. This will ruin everything. Alina cried. Well, I let the word hang in the air, a poisonous little cloud. Now that you mention it, without my financial support, you probably are going to find a lot of things ruined pretty soon. What does that mean? Liam's voice was tight. It means, have you looked at your actual budget lately? Your mortgage is $3,800 a month. Your combined income is what, $11,000 after taxes? With your car payments, your designer clothes habit, Alina, your golf club membership, Liam, your bleeding money. The only reason you've stayed afloat is because I've been plugging the holes. The grocery bills I've quietly covered, the property tax payment I made last quarter, the little loans for the new furnace. Those were gifts. Alina insisted. Were they? Because from my new perspective, they look an awful lot like an allowance, and allowances can be stopped. The silence stretched. Finally, Liam spoke. his voice small. What do you want, Mom? An hour ago, they wanted me gone. Now, they were negotiating. I want exactly what you offered me, to disappear from your family, and I want to take my investment with me when I go. By Christmas morning, my phone had 42 missed calls and countless texts. I ignored them all, enjoying a room service breakfast of Eggs Benedict and reading a novel. At 10 a.m., there was a firm knock on my hotel room door. Through the peephole, I saw Liam, still in his rumpled pajama pants and a hoodie, his face pale and shadowed with exhaustion. I opened the door, but didn't invite him in. Shouldn't you be watching your children open their presents? Mom, we need to talk. Elena's a wreck. The kids are confused. Her parents are furious. This is a disaster. I'm sorry to hear that. I hope you can salvage the day. Salvage it? You nuked it from orbit. Over a stupid argument. I stepped aside. Come in, Liam. He slumped into the room's armchair, while I remained standing. This wasn't a stupid argument. This was about respect, about basic human decency. When was the last time you asked about my life, my friends, my health? When was the last time you invited me somewhere because you wanted my company, not my credit card? He opened his mouth, then closed it. With what money, Elena? You don't have a job. You live in a house you couldn't afford without my money. I'll get a job. That's an excellent idea, but it doesn't change the current situation with the house. The negotiation continued, desperate and futile. By 3 p.m., they'd called 18 more times. I'd had enough. I turned off my phone and went for a walk through the quiet city streets. The peace was profound. A week later, the formal notice of intent to partition property was delivered by a process server. The war had begun. The following months were a blur of legal maneuvering and emotional turmoil. They tried everything: guilt, anger, manipulation. They even, in a stunningly low move, called Adult Protective Services, claiming I was confused and being financially exploited. A projection so blatant, it was almost funny. The case was dismissed after a single meeting where I presented Ben Reed and a folder of financial records to a very understanding social worker. The standoff lasted through the winter and into the spring. Then, an unexpected thing happened. Elena's mother, Eleanor, a stern, elegant woman I'd always found intimidating, asked to meet me for coffee. We sat in a quiet cafe. Vivian, she began, stirring her latte, I am not here to ask for mercy for my daughter. I raised an eyebrow. I am here to thank you, she said, her gaze direct. I have watched Elena become a monster of entitlement, and her father and I are to blame. We never said no. We always rescued her. You are the first person to ever hold her accountable. Whatever you decide about the house, do not back down. She needs to learn this lesson. Her support was unexpected and powerful. It gave me the final ounce of strength I needed. The climax came not in a courtroom, but in Ben's conference room in May. Liam and Elena sat across from me, defeated. The fight had gone out of them. The house had become a prison, and they knew it. We can't buy you out, Liam said, his voice flat. We've tried. We can't get a loan for that amount. Then we sell, I said, not unkindly. We accept, Elena whispered, not looking at me. But I had been doing a lot of thinking. The spiteful part of me wanted to see them humbled. The mother in me remembered the hopeful young man Liam had once been. I have a counterproposal, I said. They looked up, wary. I will sell you my 40% share for $300,000, a significant discount from the $480,000 it's worth, but there are conditions. I laid them out. First, Elena gets a job within 90 days and keeps it for a minimum of 2 years. Second, they sell Liam's expensive sports car and use the equity to pay down their other debts. Third, they adhere to a strict, monitored budget for 2 years, with quarterly check-ins with Ben Reed. If they violated any term, the full $480,000 would become due immediately. Controlling, Elena said, but without her usual fire. It's called financial responsibility, I replied. It's what adults do. They accepted. The paperwork was signed. The house was theirs, but they were finally shackled to the reality of their own choices. 6 months later, I am sitting in my new apartment in a vibrant, active adult community in Asheville nestled in the Blue Ridge Mountains. The money from the buyout has given me security I haven't felt in years. I've joined a hiking club and a pottery class. My phone rings. It's Elena. Vivian. Her voice is different, tired, but clear. I got a job as a paralegal. It's hard, but I'm good at it. I'm glad to hear that, Elena, and I genuinely was. And I'm sorry, a real apology. I was awful. I treated you like a bank. I see that now. actually having to work for money. It changes your perspective. It does, I agreed. Liam, he's still struggling with it all. But we're talking more, actually talking. We can't afford not to. She gave a small, genuine laugh. Vivian, would you like to come for Thanksgiving? Nothing big, just us and the kids. I thought about it. The old me would have jumped at the chance. The new me was wiser. I'd like that, I said. But let's meet at a restaurant first. Neutral ground, of course, she said, and I heard no resentment, only understanding. After we hung up, I looked out my window at the rolling mountains, painted with the fiery colors of autumn. I had given them a fortune, and it had nearly destroyed us all. I had taken most of it back, and in doing so, I had given us all something more valuable, a chance at a real relationship, built on respect, not resentment. I had given them the gift of consequences, and I had given myself the gift of freedom. Sometimes the strongest act of love is not giving, but stopping. It's building a boundary where once there was only a void. It's choosing to value yourself enough to say, no more. Your peace is worth fighting for. What's a boundary you've had to set that changed everything? Share your story in the comments below. I read everyone. I'll wait, I said, my voice quiet but firm. He had no answer. In the past 3 years, I continued, how much money do you think I've given you? Beyond the down payment. I don't know, a few thousand here and there. Try $57,000. The number hung in the air, stark and undeniable. 57,000, on top of the 250,000 for the house. That's over $300,000. Liam, your father and I scrimped and saved our entire lives for that money. He put his head in his hands. We were going to pay you back, were you? Because Alina was just talking about a trip to Bora Bora. Neither of you has ever mentioned repayment. What do you want from me? He mumbled into his palms. I want you to understand that I am not an ATM. I want you to understand that generosity has limits. And I want you to understand that when you treat someone with contempt, eventually, they stop caring about your problems. So, you're punishing us by ruining Christmas. The sheer lack of awareness in that question solidified my resolve. No, Liam, I'm protecting myself by ending the financial exploitation. Exploitation, that's dramatic. Is it? You've conditioned me to believe my only value is monetary. You've trained me to expect crumbs of affection in exchange for massive financial support. You made me feel guilty for having needs while you took everything for granted. I sat opposite him. Yesterday, your wife told me the best gift I could give was to vanish, and you stood by and said nothing. You're going to get your wish. He looked up, fear in his eyes. What does that mean? It means you need to learn to stand on your own 2 feet. And it means the house situation is about to get very complicated. What about the house? I'm talking about the legal documents you were too busy to read properly, the ones that make me a 40% owner of your precious house. The color drained from his face. That's not possible. Oh, it's very possible. Deed of trust, document number 202-108-4572. Check the county records. He stared at me as if I'd grown a second head. You own part of our house. I secured my loan, a prudent business decision, as it turns out, and I've decided I'd like my investment back. You can't do this. I can, and I am. You have a choice. Buy out my 40% share at the current market value. The house is now appraised at $1.2 million. So that's $480,000, or we sell the house and split the proceeds. We can't get $500,000, he cried, standing up. Then I suggest you start looking at apartments. The hotel phone rang. I answered it. Mrs. Costello, this is Sophia from the Grand Manor. I have a Mrs. Elena Costello on the line. She's offering to pay for the dinner herself if we'll reinstate it. I looked at Liam, whose eyes were wide with desperate hope. That's very generous of her, Sophia, but I'm afraid that's not possible. There are family dynamics at play that make it inappropriate. The cancellation stands. After I hung up, Liam was already dialing his phone. I have to call Alina, of course, but when you speak to your wife, make sure she understands one thing. Liam, the woman who left your house last night was desperate for your love. The woman you're speaking to now is done being used. He left, a shell of the man I'd raised. 20 minutes later, my cell phone rang. Alina Vivian. Her voice was raw. We need to talk. No, Alina, we really don't. You made your position perfectly clear. I was stressed. I didn't mean it. You've been stressed for 3 years. In all that time, you've never once thanked me. Not for the house, not for the dinners, not for babysitting. You've never called just to talk. You've never seen me as anything other than a resource. That's not true. You're family. Yesterday, you said the best gift I could give this family was to disappear. Today, I'm family. Which is it? She broke down into sobs. Vivian, please, I'll do anything. I'll apologize. I'll pay you back.